providers, also being, involved with the bigger providers. And yeah, it's been hugely empowering in lots of ways, but also seeing how the whole sector has changed massively. And then I found myself with public health quite by accident, but so pleased. I've been here the last year. I was in the pandemic last year helping some homes in West Sussex. And somebody called me and said there was this position for somebody they wanted who had experience through the pandemic. And, would I be interested? And that was it. The next minute I found myself, in this position, and we've been, as lots of the public health different groups around the country have been doing, they have specific teams that look after the care sector, and we look after the homes that are in the Bexley Borough, and also daycare and domiciliary care, which we have nearly 60-70 providers, and the care homes is over 31, but we're in contact with all the other boroughs as well. So yeah, that's my journey to this point. And it's interesting because a lot of people always ask managers that are leaving the sector, what can they go on and do? And I've thoroughly enjoyed this past year, been extremely busy because obviously pandemic still, but working with some really, really, really good people, really great team.
Fantastic. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for that, Shirley. So that was a long story. There was a lot of nuggets in there, which we will explore another time. Going back to our conversation about coronavirus, and it started in COVID-19. Now we are in 21, going to 22 next year. Now we are seeing another wave. From your perspective, what are you seeing out there? Are care homes affected or not, or what is the
pattern? So what we're seeing, and I've had a chat with quite a few managers today, and over the last week, really, we're not seeing that severity of illness, which, thankfully, there was a lot of people that it was just devastating for. And the registered managers working through all that last year, and everybody in the team, not just registered managers, but who we're talking about specifically at the moment. We are seeing a few cases in residents, but most are asymptomatic. I think I only know of one resident that's symptomatic, but they're being managed with paracetamol, they're in the home, they're absolutely fine. What we have seen is this, rise with the staff members, and obviously community acquired. People are out and about. There's so many different messages out there. I was speaking to somebody today who might even be on this call, actually, Sam, and she was saying, she's just on repeat the whole time. And it is about that, repetition is the mother of all skills. And even though we are a year and a half, 2 years in now, you're still having to repeat because people get weary. Even myself, I was thinking today, there was something about the guidance. And honestly, Isaac, I thought I was going mad. And I had somebody ringing me, one of the consultants asking me, and I was like, do you know what? I don't know. I did know, we both knew, but we've been repeating it and things have been changing and changing. You just forget. You have those, those moments. So yeah, there's been a little bit of that going on with people, but I think at this moment we haven't got that severity, and for that, everybody's very thankful, but still having to be very careful because we're also seeing those that aren't vaccinated, who are ending up in hospital. That isn't a good scenario at all.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I think so the vaccine is working.
Yeah, and there's more emphasis as well on when we're having to report They're wanting to know, booster status. This is, again, the next push. Those that haven't had the vaccine, if there's families, people who still haven't had that vaccine, and those that have, making sure now that they're getting that booster if they're 6 months post their second vaccine. Yeah,
I did read the news today or yesterday. Israel, they are pushing for the 4th dose of vaccine.
Yeah, I'm sure it feels like we're in that cycle at the moment, because obviously as the immunity wanes, this is what they're looking at. The science is looking at what is actually happening as this goes on.
Yeah, I think you did, when we had the conversation just before the event started, you did mention about back to basics of infection control. We didn't realize the importance of back to basics so much in infection control for such a long time, because the only thing that we had to deal with in care homes is probably norovirus maximum or chest infection, 2 or 3 cases. Now we are totally in a different ball game, and so this is the high time to go back to basics: the chain of infection, the host, microorganism, cycle of infection, how you can break it, prevent it.
Absolutely. Do you want me to?
How can we reiterate those basics? Culturally more embedded in a care home. What are the best practices you're seeing?
So I think, firstly, infection control can be as dull as dishwater. So, it's getting people engaged. However, when we've been doing the training, I wanted to mention, we've come across, or I've been using, infection prevention workbook. I think I mentioned that to you, which is from Harrogate, and they're looking at rolling it throughout London. It's all over the place, but it's been about getting the champions in place. And I know we always talk about champions, whether it be in oral care or whatever. Infection control is no different. And I had a great person who I was working with initially in this role, and she always used to say, infection control isn't some utensil that we just pull out of the kitchen sink, kitchen drawer when it's needed. It really needs to be there right from the beginning. And I remember when the pandemic started, or just before, myself and another quality assurance manager last year in West Sussex, we straight away jumped into, infection control mode. And it was really interesting how a lot of the staff weren't fully engaged in that, even with the hand washing, which, was the basic thing. I mean, what were people doing before the pandemic if they weren't singing happy birthday and, washing their hands for 20 seconds? But it was all about that, taking everything back to basics, your standard infection control precautions, as you've just mentioned, chain of infection, and people understanding how to break that chain of infection, whether it be, with the your PPE, the extra hand washing, whatever it might be, and understanding how they were, part of the chain of enabling this virus to carry on, whether it aerosol, droplet, touching things, uniforms being washed after each shift, the fact that COVID could be staying on uniforms for 72 hours, all this type of thing. It's all been about the education and the basic education and getting it across to people in a way that they're engaged, really.
Yeah, I think, thank you for that tip, Shirley. Whenever I speak to a care home provider, or as a part of my coaching program as well, I always tell them, it's all going back to basics and how you can prevent it happening, or letting it go, having an outbreak, even if you spot the first case, and how can you, the success is finding the first case as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Absolutely.
How quickly you find it, you can put measures in place to get it, stopped there straight away, isn't it? But I think having vaccines and for any disease, we are accustomed to having a small pill in order to cure that disease, but we don't look at the other aspect of how to prevent it in the first place.
Yeah, and that's the key word, isn't it? Prevention.
Yes.
And everybody understanding what we've seen with the training is everybody appreciating that it's not just one person's responsibility. Just because you have your manager, your deputy, your clinical, whoever the champion is overseeing infection prevention control, it's like health and safety. It is everybody's business within a care home. It's all part of the safe, caring, responsive, effective, well-led. That message needs to be, from the get-go, really.
Yeah. So one question to you, I think it's a responsibility of everyone. Does that mean that we have to start, some kind of structured education to people who are actually visiting care homes as well, such as relatives as well?
Yes, and in fact, last year we were doing that in one of the home that I was taking through the pandemic, in the same way that you've got residents living with dementia and you're having the dementia talks for family and friends.
Yep.
I think it's the same thing, yes, because as well you do notice that often there's that disconnect, and especially when guidance is changing, and for the managers it can be so difficult to balance not only what you're managing with your staff and your residents and keeping them safe, but then everything that's coming through the door in terms of, the family's questions. And I think if people understand a little bit more, for example, just one little thing, Isaac, when you're out and about, outside in the fresh air, we keep talking about ventilation is really important. You see people walking about outside, maybe they need to, but there's a lot of people who often have a mask on when they're out in the fresh air. You don't actually need to, because you're in that, that open environment. But it's explaining that when people are coming into our environment, into the care home, changing that mask, because if they have been out and about in the environment with that on, they're then coming into the care home. We need them to change their masks. And I know that there's been challenges around this. I've had people asking me, what can we do? In our particular area, they've redone a letter from our director of public health. So it's, it's just those little things, really.
Yeah. I think when I visit care homes, the amount of time I have seen relatives having close contact without, properly wearing PPEs, something that we have to consider in a more formal way in the care sector, if this is going to be the case going forward.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And how it's transmitted, because I think as well, I think we were talking about this, I have personally seen, and I was like that last year, I was so highly strung because I was just so concerned and worried. And I think when you're going all the time, this was a conversation we had, it's like the schools, we've just watched the schools come to the end of their break.
Yeah.
They have a break. There is a definite, if you want to call it, that fire break. They go from half term to whatever, full term. Now we're at Christmas break. In the care sector, there are no breaks. So, it's around people managing what they're doing as well, because the way you're going to be speaking to your families and your relatives is, how you're going to get them on board. If managers are, a level 8 or 9 and they're up here and they're trying to get it across to families as well, how important it is, the PPE. Sometimes it doesn't always come across in the right way. So I think, yes, there is definitely a need there for some good learning and education for family, friends, relatives, definitely.
Yep. So I was also thinking, well, of course, into COVID, nearly 2 years now. Uh, how are you feeling about the well-being of the managers? What are the patterns you are seeing?
Just that people are really, really tired. I've had some managers quite tearful because, for example, if there has been COVID that's come in the home where there were a few outbreaks, they feel wholly responsible. And it's about, as I said to somebody the other day, and we were on an IMT with LCRC, you have to look at the fact that you have put everything in place. You've got to treat it as business as usual and not take it personally. That's really easy to say those words, but having been in that position last year, and when certain things were happening, you do have to stop and start, a step at a time. And like we were saying, pare it all back, take it back to basics, really get yourself so well organized, and have that time out. You have to. I mean, we had this the other week on the course that you did. I mean, I love getting out first thing in the morning, and I know it isn't always possible for people, but they need to really be looking at that self-care and asking for help if that's what they need. There's no, in fact, if people are asking for help, that's a strength, because you're identifying that, you're needing that little bit of help. I've found, if you're saying about trends, some of the managers that I've spoken to, I think they feel that they should be able to do it all, and they really, they shouldn't be thinking that way. There's a lot of people around and resources to help, and it's far better to put that red flag up and say, look, I need help now, rather than just, stoic, great word, but it's no good when you're burnt out.
Totally agree. I mean, that's very that's one of the negative aspects of the people who work in the care sector, because they care about others too much.
Absolutely.
They tend to say yes to everything, and but they don't realize how much overloaded they are in managing their own workload and adding extra bits to their own workload. And it's not achievable. I think, I always tell managers and care home owners that, running a care home itself, it's a double full-time job. And then you have this COVID thing, testing thing, the admin side, speaking to relatives. It's not possible. You need to have some kind of additional mechanism for people to support those basic stuff. So everything should be considered as small mini projects, and see what resources you have and get it done, timelines, or those sort of things. So I do a lot of turnaround type of advice, and one of the basic things that I come across very often in care setting is, even when they are inadequate, the managers are expected to operate the care home on a day-to-day basis, plus the improvements that needed as well.
Yeah.
But when we are actually looking at one project where all the care plans needs to be rewritten and uploaded to the care planning platform, that itself is like a 2 months project.
Yeah.
Manager was thinking about doing it by herself, which is never going to happen in 1 year time. And by that time, CQC will be back, and they'll be re-rated again inadequate, and we are losing a precious service and people's house. So I think you touch a really good point, and people have to raise their hands and say, it's enough, and I need some help. That's all they need to do. And if they're not recognized in the current job, if not, then they'll have to make those decisions where they get help from where they shouldn't.
I think as well, we're going into a new year.
Yeah.
And everybody has, your New Year's resolutions, all those types of things. But I remember one home which was what wasn't in a great place and left it with elements, though it was all good, and elements of outstanding. We had a New Year master planning, and
Wow.
it was brilliant because all the it was fun. I said to everybody, it was all the heads of departments, come along, and I want you to bring one thing that if you were going to a desert island, you'd want to have with you. And we did a whole 6-month planning really for the home. And it was great because it really got everybody to share everything that they wanted to do around the home, but also with each other. So there wasn't, you know, it wasn't things being done in silos or isolation. And I think sometimes it's about that. It's, you know, we're coming to the end of the year. Yes, we're still in this position, but looking at doing something which will be good for the manager to have that plan and work the plan, like you talked about a lot, and just identify the areas and be really, really honest. The areas where they feel that there are those chinks and those links that aren't quite good, bring them to the forefront so that they can be looking at them. And if it is around, you know, having the champions in place, whatever it might be, focus on that and not try to focus on everything.
Yep.
Make sure that that's delegated throughout the home with everybody.
Yeah, interesting. I think when we talk about champions, sometimes I go to care homes and I see champions on the wall with a photograph. I actually ask them, okay, show me what champions has done and what outcomes you have achieved out of it. So it shouldn't be just a showcase thing, but by championing somebody to do it, one, they need to have the attitude to learn that particular part of the care home and then do something about it and create some difference. That's very, very important. If we are actually delegating responsibilities for us to free our time, that will not work. That person has to have an appetite to learn about infection.
Absolutely, they've got to want to do it.
And then do something about it. And they need to lead the training. And I think once it becomes team game, you know, challenging any crisis would be a lot easier. I think managers are taking a lot on their shoulders, and they naturally think that I should be involved in everything. You know, I always recommend the book Productivity Ninja, where you know, recommend other people to upskill. So once we are not letting other people to do stuff, you're actually preventing their own growth. So it's very important to upskill people, make them champions for a reason that they love to enjoy as well. And that's the same with infection control. I spoke to a nurse, manager yesterday. She said we have a positive case. Isaac, I'm really proud that my team is so inspired that, you know, they're constantly talking through walkie-talkies, who needs help, type of conversations. So can you imagine that sort of work culture everywhere in the care sector? That would be fantastic. It's a team game. So for those who are listening here, please, you know, look around your team and see who loves to do what or who loves to learn the particular aspect. Pick them, choose them, give them the guidance to read and study, and ask them to reflect on our practice, make an action plan, and let them be responsible for it. And as manager, you can be overseeing what they're doing and give them advice. It's simple. It's enabling the people around you, isn't it, Shirley? That's the trick.
That is the trick. It really is. And exactly as you've said, if they're interested in that, find out what it is that, you know, they are interested in. They may not be. We know there's a lot of people that are just stepping time.
Yeah.
But it's finding those diamonds.
Yeah. Fantastic. And the question to you is, I know it's a tough one. So the question is, the pandemic has been with us last nearly 2 years now. We have no idea how long it's going to be.
I'll go and get my crystal ball. My Christmas crystal ball.
So should I ask this question or not? Probably not. So, maybe I will restructure the question. The question would be, it's a tough time for people working in social care sector. How can we make it more attractive even through this pandemic? We are in a shortage of workers. I think started the skill migration from abroad. How can we make it more attractive during this tough time? Do you have any ideas, or what would you do if you were a manager again?
Oh, Isaac, if I was a manager again, yeah, I would look at how the team was recruited. Again, you're wanting the people in that team who really want to be in that team. I think, throughout the country, there are some amazing people. How would you make it more attractive? Obviously, we're looking at the money, the pounds and the pennies, and there has to be a lot more seriousness taken around this sector.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't feel there ever has been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I attended a meeting last week, and it was shocking to hear that people working in the care sector, the troubles or crises that they are going through in their own personal life due to extended working hours and less salary or wages being taken at home, is actually affecting their own physical health and the relationship as well.
Yeah. Do you, sorry for interrupting, do you remember, I remember when shifts used to be 6 hours.
Yep.
And when I came back here, suddenly everybody was doing 12-hour shifts. And this was something that came up the other day as well. Flexibility, there needs, that's another way of making things more attractive, by things being more flexible, because you do have a sector. I remember one of the homes I was at, they wouldn't take somebody on because they couldn't start at 7:30, and we were having exactly the same conversation the other day, infection control, but it was all around recruitment as well, and the fact that people have to become more flexible. Mm-hmm. As well, because people's lives are different, and that's another way. I'm sure there's lots of different things if we really started to delve into it.
Yeah, I think I started with infection control. Now we are diverting to more bigger issues of the sector.
I know. Yeah. But infection control, it will always be there, and I think for me it was really ingrained in me when I first started my training in Hull Royal Infirmary. I always remember Sister Denny screeching at a pupil nurse because they hadn't washed their hands before and doing an aseptic technique and wiping the trolley down. I can tell you now, I never ever forgot that, and it was like, it's those things. It's that discipline around it all. So yeah, it's
absolutely. I too remember a great nurse who was so strict with all the hygienic measures.
Yeah.
Aseptic techniques. My teachers. I think if we got the basics right, then it should be easier. And
that's right. It all follows through. So we then get back to inductions and things like that, and then inductions being very thorough.
Yeah, I think if you look at Code of Practice for Infection Health and Social Care Act 2008, all the infection control guidance for care home, which was released in 2013 or 15, it hasn't actually changed after COVID started. So the code it still remains the same. That means we already had the guidance way before all this happened.
Yeah, there just wasn't enough focus on it.
Yep.
And likewise, you've got your Infection Prevention Society, places like this.
Yep.
really great resources there. But yes, the basics have always been the basics.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So how are you planning to stay in your career as an IPC lead PhD, or what else are you, how is it going to be the future look like for you?
Well, at the moment, I'm, very, very happy focusing on the care home environment and supporting the managers around this and the training. I'm really, really enjoying delivering the training, and I'm also rolling out an audit tool.
Yeah.
So I'm quite busy with that, and I really, really enjoy that. And of course, sometimes there's some other consultancy that comes up. But at the moment, that's what I'm focusing on. And yeah, Isaac, honestly, this last year, it's been great because it's allowed me to reflect on what's gone on the last few years as well.
Fantastic.
And I've got to see a different view of lots of things. Yeah, it's been very good.
Shirley, it's great to have you here. I can see that a lot of people are actually watching live, which is great. So if anyone has any questions to ask our lovely Shirley, please do. But where can we find you, Shirley? You are in LinkedIn, you are in Twitter.
I am, and I'll send you've got my email and things.
Yes.
Yeah, I need to check out Twitter actually. I don't if your Twitter account can get hacked. So I went to go in mine the other day and I couldn't get in, so I don't know what's happened. I will have to have a look at that. I'm too busy snapping about doing photographs, so I haven't got time for looking at things like that, but I will do. I will.
That's your hobby, isn't it? Photograph.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a sky obsessor, as you know.
Yes.
So sunrises and sunsets, and yeah, I just love it.
Yeah, I get these beautiful pictures from Shirley every morning, and I'm so jealous of receiving those pictures as well.
Yeah, that could sound really bad. They are sunsets and sunrises. Let's just confirm that.
Yeah, fantastic. Anyway, thank you very much, Shirley. It's amazing to have you here. But anyone who wants to get in touch with Shirley, please do through LinkedIn. That's it. I think that's the easiest way to reach out.
Yeah.
Amazing person. Always shows a great attitude and appreciation. Always cares about social care sector. Whenever we have conversation, there's always some energy, frequency that's attaching us together, connecting us in this small world of social care. So keep up the great work, Shirley, and keep us posted on what you're doing and what.
Isaac, you too.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for the opportunity. It's great to see you.
No, we're blessed to have you. Thank you.
Happy Christmas, everybody.
Happy Christmas. Thank you.
Bye.